So on today's episode, we are going to be talking about how to increase your self-compassion. And one of the things I think that happens to us when we are, being told you need to be more compassionate with yourself, you need to do more things for yourself, we really may have a disconnect with it, or we'll start doing all the things like, yeah, I'm going to be more self-compassionate, so I'm going to sleep in more. Or yeah, I'm going to be more self-compassionate with myself, so I'm going to go ahead and buy myself that extra thing. Like we make it almost as an excuse to, I don't know, I think I kind of do it, to give ourselves more things, or we don't necessarily know what that looks like, because if you're not practicing self-compassion, how could you possibly know what that is? You have to start somewhere.
I think when I think of the word self-compassion and just hearing you talk about it, I think about, I'll often tell myself to give myself a little grace, to not be so hard on myself, so critical on myself. So when I'm thinking of self-compassion, if I make a mistake on a project or something, to give myself some grace. I don't necessarily give myself some things, but I think sometimes forgiving myself can be one of the hardest things for me to do.
Well, even that phrase, giving yourself some grace, it's something I say a lot. And I've realized that, maybe some people don't know exactly what that means. And I think it means something a little bit different for everybody. And so that's really what this episode is about. We're going to show you guys how to use your childhood version of yourself through some very specific techniques to actually help you give yourself that grace, give yourself that self-compassion, to help you be nicer to yourself, because you are your own harshest critic. We always are. And, nobody's going to be meaner to me than myself. It's just the truth.
And, the way that I think the reason why it's so important to even look at your inner child, or looking at childhood pictures, or even just reflecting on your childhood, is because our thought processes, our behavior, the dialogue that we have with ourselves are formed. I think what we said, like before the age of 8, it's reinforced by your parents. And so when we're talking about building, self-compassion or giving yourself some grace, to me, it's no surprise that we have to go back in order to go forward.
Yes, you do have to go back and not necessarily dwell, but figure out how things were then, and give yourself a roadmap going forward, because those beliefs that your childhood self has or learned, right? Because we learned this from somebody else, they don't serve you anymore. And you're an adult and you want to be making decisions from this place in your life, not back when you were a kid. And so in order to increase that self-compassion, if you've never had self-compassion for yourself because you didn't learn it, you didn't have people modeling it for themselves, or the way they modeled it for themselves was, yeah, I'm going to be real self-compassionate with myself. I'm going to sit here and, drink all my beer and watch the football. Like, that's my me time. That may not be the best modeling. And so here we are as adults trying to figure out, how do I love myself more? How am I nicer to myself? And this childhood work, I think, has really made a big difference for me, and I know for you too, right?
Yeah. So I've been, I think on social media, on my Instagram, I actually did, this is maybe about a year ago, I found a picture of myself. I was probably about 5 years old, and I don't know, it was just kind of sad looking at this picture, because I knew in just a few short years what her life would look like. And so it's a little bit different than what you're talking about, because I just basically did the exercise of what would I tell that 5-year-old Melissa. But I did infuse a lot of love in that message, to love yourself, to know that you're worthy, that what you're saying matters. And because I did feel silenced a lot as a kid. So that exercise was really helpful in looking at that picture. But I also think that inner child work is so important, because, as we get older, we get new life experiences that we can pull from, and which allow us to empathize and sympathize with, I wouldn't say like our abusers, but like people that maybe have done us wrong. I know that I do that a lot with my parents. I'll be like, oh, well, my mom was a single mom, so I can understand why she did this, or my father, I wouldn't say excuses, but I was able to come at it from a 36-year-old lens. But my counselor would be like, no, you need to stop that. Like, what did 10-year-old Melissa feel like in that moment?
Well, you have a very strong hyper-rational saboteur.
Absolutely.
And so your hyper-rational comes out and is like, well, here are all of the reasons why it was like that. Like, get the fuck over it. right?
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of like the tone that has. And sometimes we'll have that too, where it's like, you know what, my parents weren't around, they weren't doing things, and it's a way for us to rationalize
Make
it.
sense of the world.
Yeah, make sense of the world. But when you're looking at, you know, your childhood in that time period, your world is your parents. Your
Mm-hmm.
world are those figures. You don't know all of these other things that you know when you're, you know, in your 30s and healing and doing all that stuff. And so at that point, you think, oh, I did something wrong. Like 5-year-old Melissa did something wrong. And that's like why mommy and daddy are fighting. Like, no, you don't actually know. It has nothing to do with you. But as little kids, that's what we do. We make everything about ourselves. And so I love that you picked up on the childhood picture, because the childhood picture is a way for you to actually see, and you don't have to visualize like how I was as a child. It's a gateway to help you have that compassion. So the way that I like to use the childhood pictures, or that I've used it, I should say, is 2 different techniques. One of them is having that picture basically everywhere that I would need it. So I have one on my phone as my cover, and I have another childhood picture in my workstation. And part of what that does is it really just helps remind me to be nicer to myself. Like, would I make, you know, little baby Cydia wait to go use the restroom until this other email got done? No, I wouldn't say you got to hold it. You got to do this. It's like, if I have to go use the restroom, go use the restroom. Like, this email can wait. And having those pictures, like I will be there typing up emotion, be like, okay, I'll eat my lunch as soon as I finish this section. I will do this as soon as X, right? Like this whole earning mentality. And then I could look at the picture and then be like, would I do this to a child? And would I do this to myself as a child? It's like, no, I wouldn't.
I really love that you're using, when you were talking earlier about using, you know, childhood pictures for self-compassion, I really couldn't understand how that would play out, but I see what you're talking about, because you're right. I wouldn't have any of my nieces or nephew hold, you know, having to go to the bathroom because we need to finish this puzzle first, or we need it, you know what I mean? And so it's like, why do we extend that compassion to young children but not to ourselves? So now I can understand the importance or significance of having your picture, your childhood picture, everywhere.
Yeah, and it's really for that reminder, especially as you're working on just being nicer to yourself. Like, you know, checking in. It's like, would I make this child wait? No, you can buy water at home. Like, if I'm thirsty right here, it's like, I'll probably just buy it right now, and just to be nicer to myself. And I have found myself being much nicer to myself when I have those picture reminders, especially when I'm in the middle of something where it's like, oh my God, this is so hard, or I have to finish this, because it's again, it's that earning mentality. And then I'll really enjoy it. It's like, yeah, I'm just making myself suffer while I'm suffering before I can have some relief.
This is kind of like a really random question. And if you're a parent, I really mean nothing by this. But like, why do you think we show more compassion and more empathy to young children than we do ourselves?
That's a great question. I think part of it is because we know they're young kids. Like, we know like that they may not understand that there's a deadline, or they're having their hissy fits or whatever. Like, kids, I know we both don't have kids, but kids are the greatest teachers, because they force you to be in the present, right? They're caring about their feeling right now. And 5 minutes later, like, you know, they may have a fight with somebody. I remember being on a cheer trip with my friend and her daughter and her little friends, and we got outnumbered at some point by these little girls. And her daughter and this other little girl that was walking around with us, they'd gotten these flower balloons, you know, the fun balloons that the street artists make.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the girls ended up popping hers, and so the other girl's like, hey, give me your balloon. She's like, no, like, that's my balloon. And so they got into this huge fight over this flower balloon. And as they were both like pouting and just like mad, and you're just like, hey, like, what is it? Like, we can get another one. Like, you know, it was just more of like, well, I asked her for something and she didn't give it to me. Like, she hurt my feelings. They had this whole thing, and then, I kid you not, the other little girl ended up accidentally popping her balloon as well. And then they're both just laughing. And just like, it was the funniest thing. They got over it, hugged it out, and then we're walking off, and it's like, what the fuck just happened?
All in the span of 5 minutes.
All in like 5 minutes. Yeah, exactly. It was just, what the hell just happened? But like, they force you to be in the moment, feel whatever's going on. Like, kids aren't holding on to their feelings unless there's something that they've learned. If I express my feelings, no one cares. If I express my feelings, it's going to cause other people to fight.
Or it's going to hurt mommy or daddy's feelings if I tell them I'm unhappy. Or, so you're like worrying about other people. That's when you start that learned behavior of putting other people's needs before your own.
Exactly. And so at some point, you start developing the saboteurs, the sheltering or whatever. You start pulling back and you don't express your excitement over something, right? Because little kids will do that too. They'll be super excited to like show you this rock, and if you don't react as excited as them, they're like, oh, I guess that wasn't,
well, then I'm never going to show you this rock again.
Right. And so you don't even necessarily have to have a traumatic childhood to have these feelings of, oh, I wasn't really being validated, or oh, wow, my idea didn't really matter.
So this seems to really be in alignment with your word of the year, which is be in the moment. This childhood or this inner child work through the pictures allows you to kind of, okay, shit, I need to remain present.
It is definitely a way to remain present, but also have that additional kindness, because I'm so much nicer to little kids and so much more patient with them. And there's something about us being in adulthood where we are harder on ourselves and we expect us to already know how to do some things. So for example, I met with my accountant yesterday, and she's not a spicy accountant. I know what you TikTokers are thinking.
Oh no,
she's an actual
spicy.
Accountant. I mean, she could be a spicy accountant,
she's super
but
spicy.
She's not. And the first time I met with her, I came back and I was like, oh my God, like I felt so vulnerable, because like there was no hiding any of the things. It was like, here's all of my finances for you to look at, very bare, and feeling like, oh man, like I don't know all of these things. And I was just, like I should magically know all of these things when I've never run a business before. I've never had to do my own accounting. The last time I took any kind of accounting actual class was in high school, which was 20 years ago. And so I just felt myself like being so hard on myself because the books were a mess. I didn't know what the fuck I'm doing, right? But then I met with her again recently, and I had more self-compassion for myself because I am learning it. Like, where did this expectation of me already having like perfect books from the beginning even come from?
Well, I mean, you think about young children, right? We get so excited when they are learning something new, and we try to encourage that. We don't berate them being like, what do you mean you don't understand that, 9 times 9 is 81? You're 4. Like, come on, like, get with it. You're just so excited because they have that sense of wonder and curiosity that I think that we lose over time, due to, standardized tests at school or, expectations at work. That sense of wonder and curiosity gets squashed because we have expectations held of ourselves that we need to meet, and that becomes our priority.
That it becomes our priority, that we somehow need to already magically know all the things.
Well, you have Google. Like, I don't understand why you...
Right. Yeah. Like she asked me during our first meeting, she's like, okay, have you reconciled these things? I was like, did I what? Like, what is reconcile? Like, talk to me about this.
Oh my God. I love that, but yeah.
Yeah. But then all this week I spent time reconciling, all of 2021, because I didn't know what the fuck that is. And listener, if you don't know what that is, like, you may not need to know what that is. And that's okay, because if you're not a business owner, and frankly,
it's closing out your bank and your credit card statements.
Yeah.
At the end of each month.
It's additional information.
It's accounting stuff.
It's accounting stuff, right? Like, but as I was doing it, like the first time was like I was getting frustrated because it wasn't going right. And then as slowly as I started learning, like, oh, here's the mistake I made. I did go to Google and I looked at the YouTube videos, like, what the fuck is this?
But you talk about like operating from your zone of genius. Accounting is just not your zone of genius.
Fuck no.
But I mean, I think also having that self-compassion that, there's a reason why people pay accountants to do the things, because there are people like Spicy Jen that love accounting. So give your work to someone whose zone of genius is accounting.
Exactly. Right. And so it is having that, but where it ties in with the being self-compassionate is giving myself a break of, okay, yeah, you know what, you did this. And then by the time I finished reconciling one of the accounts, I was like, hey, I did that. That wasn't so hard. But you have to treat yourself almost like a child, and having those pictures really helps you have that reminder and have it at the forefront of your mind of, hey, I want to be nicer to this person. I want to be nicer to kids, because you don't want to be that asshole that's constantly like, I don't understand why you didn't color in the lines. Like, who does that? Assholes do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, such assholes.
I mean, you're not going to yell at a kid for
I wouldn't
not
yell at a kid, but I mean, that's definitely an expectation I held of myself as a child, but that should shock no one. So that
shocks no one. So that's one way.
One way. What is the second way?
So the second way, I recently learned from, I have me some mad love for Shirzad Shamin of Positive Intelligence. I'm in his coaching course right now as well, because not an overachiever over here or anything.
Nope.
And so he had us do this exercise for increasing our empathy, but not empathy towards others, empathy towards ourselves. And so literally for an entire day, we took one of your childhood pictures, and you want to take a picture that really shows your essence. And he argues that all of our essences are as unique as our fingerprints, and that we all have them as little kids, and it's something that you can find in your pictures. And so you basically all day, we just stared at our picture for several times during the day, and we're looking for that essence. What did you see? And we phrased them in I am statements. And so for me, I came up with, I am joy, I am light, I am vibrant. Like, that's what I saw as my essence. And in his, he would show, I think he said on his, like, I'm compassionate, I'm kind, I'm sensitive, right? Because he'd picked a picture that at first blush looks like a really sad childhood picture. And his whole thing was, don't look at the superficial of the picture. Like, really look at what is that essence of that child, and that is something that we want to try to tap back into. And that really resonated with me, because I do want to have more of that. And as I've been, working on my therapy work and just getting back to myself, that's really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get back to that joy, that essence, that light, because that's just where I am. And even my second childhood picture that I have is me dancing on a fountain in Guatemala. Like, I was just acting a fool. I can't remember who captured the picture. I think it was my older brother. And I was just having fun. I was just being silly. And it's like, oh, no, I love that version of myself. And I want that version of myself to be at the forefront in everything that I'm doing, as opposed to constantly being so serious, because that's just not as much fun for me.
So the two different exercises still both involve looking at your childhood picture. One is for compassion, one is from empathy. How would you define the difference between the two?
Well, one of them is really just taking the time the second technique is really just taking the time to look at that and seeing, what do you actually see about yourself? And not looking at, wow, like, I looked really young there, or wow, like, I can't believe I was, my mom thought that was a good haircut. Like, get past the superficial and really look at what is the energy of this child, what is really there, because those things are there from the beginning. You always have those things. And what's interesting about that is that if you can see that in yourself, you can start seeing that in other people, and you can start empathizing that way with other people, of just kind of seeing, their childhood silliness, or, what's beneath all of the saboteurs, what's beneath that hard shell that we're seeing. We all have this childlike wonder and innocence within us, and it expresses itself in different ways. And if you want to see the bad in people, you will see the bad. But if you want to see the good, this is a way for you to really see the good in others, but also in yourself.
In looking at, you talked about this exercise helps you kind of go beneath the hard shell. So for you, when you said I am joy, and you mentioned two others, how are you starting to crack that shell to get to your essence?
I think that, one of the things that I've been working on is making sure that as I add a little bit more structure into my life, that I do something for myself is one of my 3 pillars. So I do something legal, I do something podcast, and I do something for myself. If I'm able to do all of those things in a day, it feels like I had a good day, a good, well-rounded day where I didn't feel like one thing overtook my life. Because then I don't like those days. And so as I've been reflecting on the what's for me, I think has to be something that makes that inner child happy. So we were having coffee recently, and we were talking with one of the guys at the gym, and he was so excited about Harry Potter. Right. And so
So cute.
it was so freaking adorable because it was like, I said, hey, go get a wand. And what did he say?
He's like, you can't choose your wand. It chooses you.
Yeah. And this is like a 50-year-old man, like bodybuilder, like super
Successful
fit.
real estate
Yeah,
agent.
it's got like a Mr. Clean thing going on with the hair, just this amazing man. But that was his inner child that came
You
out.
definitely saw it there.
It was spark. It was joy. He's like, I can't pick a wand. The wand has to pick me. Like,
Yeah.
you know that. It's like, okay.
He's not wrong.
He was not wrong at all, but there was so much joy and light in that. And I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Am I doing something that makes my inner child super happy and giddy? And like, damn it, if that means that I went outside and I got myself an ice cream from the ice cream truck because the ice cream man makes me so happy, then that's what I did. And so that's more of how I'm trying to tap into that part of myself. And so, one of the things I'm doing right now is, I want to move more. And, part of that is doing more cardio. And once I hit my mark on that goal, I'm gonna get roller skates, and I'm super excited about that.
I'm really excited about it too. And if you remember from early on, I talked about my near-death experience on rollerblades. So I'm excited to get back on the blades.
Yeah, but I mean, getting back out there, doing things that I love. Like, I love riding a bike. Like, why the fuck haven't I owned a bike for the good part of my adult life? Mm-hmm. Like, that's stupid to me. I want to go buy a bike. So that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully I will have already bought the bike by the time this episode airs. But just really tapping into those parts of me that make me feel lighter, and just like I'm tapping, and not only tapping into it, but honoring that part of myself, because I feel like for so long I've neglected different parts of myself. Creativity was a big part of it, my writing, and now this is another part that I want to get back into.
I think that sounds like fun. And in appreciative inquiry, when we're working with organizations, we call it like a life-giving force, or LGF, but it really is like the essence of who you are. And I really like that idea of just looking at your picture, looking past the ugly haircuts, because we've all had them, and just really tapping into what is Melissa's being, like, what is her essence? Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah, tapping into your essence. And you even mentioned it with your picture, right? Like you first saw, like, oh man, the sadness, right? You saw, hey kid, you don't even know what the world's going to throw at you here in a couple of years. It's just sitting with the kid before you get to that, being like, okay, logical mind, like, we know you're there. Thank you for this. But right now, I just want to appreciate, like, look at her with those glasses. Look at, like, her spine is all straight in that picture. I can't wait for you guys to see this picture. It's so cute. And you just kind of see, like I saw the pride in her of just like, yeah, I'm here and it's school and I'm excited.
I saw
learn.
Innocence, like,
I saw that too.
That like came out like real big for me. Innocence, naivety, just curious. I think
Curiosity for sure was in there. And so you can see that in your pictures. And if you are a parent, I'll bet you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you can see that with your kids. And you will also see the moment where they start protecting themselves, and you may not see that as much, right? That's a clue that they're starting to build up some sort of armor against the world. And unfortunately, we all do it. It's part of us, growing up, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean that we have to reside there. We can go back to that. I mean, I think seeing like old people on TikTok doing silly things like, riding the grocery cart with each other and just having fun. Like, I love that. I don't want to go into the rest of my life with this drudgery of, okay, I work, I get a paycheck, work, sleep, repeat. Like, no, I want to enjoy my life, and my life is in the present. Your life is in the present. Your life is right now. So let's enjoy it. And these ways of honoring, healing your inner child can help with that.
That's it for this episode. Find Pivotal Moments HQ on Instagram and TikTok for all the BTS and sister-like banter you know and love. We want to thank our music director, Ron Johnson. This has been a Pug Productions podcast.